We are, in
Yeah.
fact, live now. So appreciate you for being here with me today. I know I reached out and we've talked quite a few times, and we were planning on meeting in person the first time, but life happens. I had a kid, you got sick, and work got in the way. But I'm stoked to be able to talk today. I made it seem like it's because I'm interested in you, but actually, it's because I'm a struggling father of four now, and I want to take advantage of your time for a free therapy session. So I just need you to talk me through this. I'm, I'm obviously joking. You have as I mentioned in my note when I talked about talking to you today, you write beautifully on all these concepts when it comes to performance and health in multiple domains, but particularly on the nuance and some of these terms that we utilize and dichotomies between them. But I think of your life, at least as far as I know about it, and I'll learn more today. You talk about dichotomies. You go from SEAL teams to clinical therapy, and there are stigmas around both of those realms, and they are not overlapping in too many ways. And you've written on that too. Man, tell me a little bit about your path and what got you not only to SEALs, but beyond that to clinical therapy. There's a lot of questions within that, and probably a lot of things that we can talk on. But even before SEALs, like what was young Jeff like, and what got you wanting to go there in the first place?
Oh boy, this that's quite a question. Where do I begin? Young Jeff was probably just as crazy as I am now, but probably less, but more active, more energy. I would say. 48 years old. I'm still active, but I'm not bouncing off the walls like I was when I was 17. Um, all my life, when I was a kid, growing up in Cincinnati and in Cleveland, Ohio. Um, I just wanted to carry a gun. That's honestly that's what I wanted to do. I played with toy guns. We lived in the woods, like just away from people, so that kind of lends itself to much more imagination as a kid. Um, and so I was off just just running through the hills and the creeks and the stuff around us, just imagining bad guys that I was fighting or people I was saving or I just always wanted to be the hero. And so I wanted to see action and for the longest time, I wanted to be a police officer because I figured they must see a lot of action, right? They do in the movies. So, so I come to this is really interesting because now I counsel them, and it's like the complete opposite. So, but we can get to that in a second. But um, ultimately, I wanted to the cop thing kind of went away, and then I wanted to be FBI. But anyway, it all circled around guns, quite honestly, and just wanted to see some action. And so I finally realized that that's probably not the best route. Military is probably it, and if I'm going to do it, then I want to be the best at it. And so I looked into it, and at first I looked into the Marines. Um, when again decided against it because I found the SEALs, quite honestly, and so that's what I did. So I tried to enlist after high school, and I couldn't because I had this skin irritation on my wrist that prevented me from enlisting. It's really weird. Things happen for a reason, I think, and I've never had anything like that before, and I never had anything like it since. But for that moment, it just prevented me from enlisting, and I was devastated. Like I was devastated, Kyle. So I went to college, and I majored in Spanish because at the time SEAL Team 4 was a Latin American working team. I figured if I spoke Spanish, then I'd go to SEAL Team 4. I'd do all kinds of drug interdictions and see some action. Well, it turns out that I graduated in 3.5 years. I never took a quarter off because I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to get there. I got to SEAL Team 4 right off to Germany, my first deployment. Never stepped foot in Latin America. So yeah. So and then after that it was Iraq, and it was all combat stuff after that. But uh my first deployment, I was really all of us, we were really pissed off because this is in 2003 and the war in Iraq had just kicked off, and here we are, keeping the bar safe in Germany, not doing much of what we really wanted to do. We did end up doing a lot of stuff in Africa actually that ended up being pretty cool, but it was a 6 month deployment, and it was kind of intermittent in terms of work. Um, and so I did another deployment at Team 4. After my first deployment, I screened for Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and I got picked up for that, and then I went through selection for that after my second deployment, and then I did 6 more deployments there. Um, a total of 8. Got shot on 2 of them. Had 4 parachute malfunctions. Lost. I have 57 pictures of friends I've lost on my phone, including my best friend, and that's not all of them. And I was given the opportunity in 2013 to take a medical retirement, and so I took it. There was nothing else I wanted to do. I was burned out, quite honestly, and I really wanted to apply the lessons that I learned, not just about myself, but organizationally and at the team level as well. I wanted to apply it to companies, and I didn't know how it applied because I didn't really have any business experience, but I knew it did, and I knew it was really just a matter of semantics. So I got out and I worked as a management consultant at the McChrystal Group for a couple of years, which basically we just took the JSOC model and applied it to companies, um, in a very like condensed, summary of what we did. We did other stuff too, but that was mainly it. Quite honestly, that got boring, and so I left and I decided to do my own thing. I went into leadership, started writing for Entrepreneur and Forbes that I mentioned, and and that's when I hit a brick wall. And this is kind of leading into where I am now. I hit a brick wall at the end of that because I realized I can't help. I really can't help other people because I don't know how to help myself. There's all this stuff, all this baggage that I dragged with me, not just from the military. Most of it as a kid, because every kid has some sort of childhood trauma, right? And mine wasn't like, there was no abuse or like anything I guess one would consider traumatic other than, just emotional invalidation, right? That's just chronic over time, right? And all those little things add up, right? And so everybody has some sort of trauma that really, influences them in some way. And so that what I learned later was what compelled me to become a SEAL. So I did in 2018. I did something that it was so just antithesis of everything that I knew about being a SEAL, about solving my own problems, about everything that I was raised, and I asked for help. I asked for help from one of my closest friends, because he had just gone through some alternative therapy, and him and another two of my closest friends had just done it, and it was like night and day. Uh, they were different. They were just better versions of themselves, and so I said, whatever you did, I need that. So I did that. I went through it. Been involved in that kind of therapy for about 7 years now, and that's really what compelled me to become a therapist. Because when I look back on my time in the teams, there was no way me or anybody else was going to talk with the shrink. We just weren't, right. And if we did, we certainly weren't going to tell anybody about it. And so I realized, older me now, looking back and just how detrimental that is, not just to the operator as an individual, but to the team and to the mission. And so I want to rewrite that script. I'm sure the way that you were raised, and, guys in our generation were raised is like therapy's weak. There's specific boxes for masculinity and another one for femininity. And if I'm here in this box, in the masculine box, then I can't be weak. I can't talk about my emotions. I can't do, this chick shit, because well, I'm not a woman. I'm a man, right? And it's what that leads to is depression, loneliness, lack of connection, everything that actually puts people into therapy. I may not catch up with them for a while, but it will. Um, and so the dichotomy that you talk about, I see things not as an either or, but a both and, right? Because the warrior that I write about in my Substack articles, the warrior holds both, right? The war fighter is right here in the single box, right? And they execute and they just do and they do and they do and they don't face their fears, which is really ironic because when, for example, when I said guys specifically don't want to go to therapy for fear of what others might think, well, they're being defined by the very fear that they're trying to avoid, right? So that itself is just ironic. And so my goal, my intent in becoming a therapist is to show guys that it's actually strength, it's actually fearlessness to ask for help, to seek somebody else. And so I figure with my background, that will let people know that it's okay. Like nobody thinks you're weak, right? It's actually the opposite. So
I
it's a long
I lo I
explanation.
love hearing origin stories, and that I mean, That's some powerful stuff, and honestly beautiful. I actually just wrote a guest post for a buddy, who put it out at some point. But it was called I don't even remember what it's called. But it's like old school mental toughness and new school emotional intelligence. But it's very much like what you're talking about. Like the way, yes, we are raised. If you are of the older millennial generation or older than that, like, yeah, you suck it up, particularly that masculinity model. Like, not even don't not even express your emotions, don't even feel them, don't even acknowledge them. Suppress that down, don't notice it, execute, execute. And by all means, there's times and places for that when you're actually in the arena, whatever it may be in your respective profession and or moment in life, where you do need to put aside, not necessarily suppress, but compartmentalize your emotions. But thankfully, we live in a relative time of peace. Most of us around the world, to where we have times where we can reflect on some of our biggest challenges and continue to push those aside. Like you said, leads to depression, leads to burnout, leads to everything else, where we can benefit from some of the newer emotional intelligence, which gets the old school mental toughness, gets the stigma of the basically no emotions, the lowercase stoic, where the new school gets all the emotions, snowflakes. Hey, how can we leverage
Right.
these so we can optimize performance? And I intentionally called us talking today becoming a warrior, because you had a recent piece on exactly that, differentiating like you just did a war fighter from a warrior. And I loved how you talk about, like, yeah, war fighters, and usually we use that term warrior in relation to people operationally, whether it's first responders domestically, of course, are war fighters in the military operationally overseas. Like, yeah, they can be warriors too, but a lot of times it's more the job and execute it without managing the war inside of it and just putting that aside. And man, a lot of people have some pretty dynamic, crazy careers, because we learned as we talked ahead of time today. You went to Ohio State like I did as well. I would have worn a Buckeye shirt if had I known that. But you
Yeah.
graduated in 2000, correct?
Right. Yep.
So 13 years in the SEALs and 8 deployments in that time. And you mentioned the extent of loss that you experienced in that short amount of time. I mean, some of us carry one loss, and how tragic it can be. And I always love the phrase, the worst thing that's ever happened to somebody is the worst thing that's ever happened to them. So whether you've lost
Right.
a best friend, you've lost 56 people that you know, and that's not even all the people you've experienced loss with, or you lost your job. If you've never had any other adversity compared to that, it's going to be a challenge. But how you deal with that challenge, there's tons of opportunity. I love someone who can understand the extremes of the world and then balance that with how can I apply that wisdom to the lesser extremes, if you will, because we're all still human. And how can you manage that? Coming back to your career in the SEAL, so 13 years from 2000 to 2013. Um, when I talk to guys that have been in special operations, and not necessarily SOCOM, but even like um, Rangers or Marines of certain type, but operational types that are high performers, high achievers. I love hearing how they get annoyed. I like your first deployment being to Germany. Like, you didn't sign up to sit on the sideline. And I love talking to people like, no, I'm going through this so I can be put at the tip of the spear in your case, or be put in the arena so I can test myself and apply my training in the most extreme of environments. So going from Germany to a very dynamic career, did you get what you were looking for? Was it different, or what was that experience like when you started being deployed to the war zone and experiencing what came with it?
It was awesome. It was freaking awesome. It was everything. Yeah, it was everything that I anticipated and more. Quite honestly, because there's obviously stuff that when you're in the moment that you can't train for, right? You just don't know. You just don't know what it might be like. You can know how you will respond. I always knew how I would respond. So, I just know myself, and so, but being in there, being in the moment, just kind of validates it, right? So it's very validating for your training, for your mindset, for your preparation. Um, it's a release, right? Quite honestly, I mean, being on deployment, shooting bad guys was a freaking release, because that's all we wanted to do is just go to war and kind of, I mean, for lack of a better term, just take out the trash. That's what we trained for. What we didn't train for was grief, right? We couldn't train for loss. We couldn't train for losing buddies. And that was the hardest thing by far. I mean, people probably think like war is awful. You gotta kill people and all this. No, war is beautiful. Believe it or not, there is no other profession out there where you find the amount of love that you do in war. Right? No other profession are there literally people right next to you who will lay down their life for you. Right? That is love. And so, is there ugly stuff in war? Yeah, but I mean that's there's ugly stuff everywhere, right? Different degrees of it. So again, it kind of goes back to what you're mentally preparing yourself for. But I got uh, I got everything that I wanted out of the teams, and probably more that I didn't want. And quite, there just came a time in 2013 where I was like, there's nothing else there that I really want to do. And I always told myself that the day that I I don't feel gratitude or special or you know motivated to go into the national mission unit of one of the national mission units of the United States is that's the day I got to go. And so that's what I did. That day came and I was like, listen, I'm burned out. I got to go. So
There's nothing like the extremes of the human condition to help you realize what truly matters. And it's funny how a lot of us pursue comfort and ease, and of course we evolved to do that in some ways, but we have these beautiful things around us now that allow us to pursue that in abundance. And we can lose touch with what truly matters. And some of these small problems can seem much bigger than what they are. But when you have experience in or actively pursue those extremes, boy, can it highlight what truly matters. However, like you said, you were not prepared for what also could come with that grief and maybe needing support in other ways that you hadn't done before. And you said something in your origin story that was pretty profound. That it was you said not until 2018 you did something that you had never done before, which was ask for help. So there was 5 years between you getting out and you actually asking for help. What were those? What was the transition like out of the teams into the private sector and those 5 years before you sought support with some of the things that you were carrying?
it was more difficult than I realized, that I even give credit for, even at the time. I was lucky enough to land somewhere at the McChrystal Group, for example, where there was still there's still SEALs, there's still operators there, and there's still like a common language that we're basically doing things that we understood, right? And so it kind of kept the legacy alive, right? As opposed to if I had gone to like I don't know, a larger consulting firm where you're just a cog in a wheel, right? And nobody, I mean, quite honestly, nobody really cares. Nobody cares about the SEAL background or anything like that. They're like, oh, cool. What can you do for me? And so there's just different scales of that, right? At the McChrystal Group, it was on a smaller scale. At a larger consulting firm, that would probably be on a much bigger scale. And so I think landing there would probably be a lot harder. Um, but I didn't realize how difficult it was until about 4 years 4 years later, about yeah, 5 years after I got out, and I was just stuck. Quite honestly, I was just stuck. How I was dealing with transition was basically booze and women. Quite honestly, that was my coping. That was my escape, and that's what I did to to kind of get away from parts of me that I didn't even know that I was running from. Quite honestly, and so that all came to a halt in 2018. I had sort of what can only be characterized as a panic attack, and that's what led to me seeking help.
Yeah.
All the stress, I was just not. I realized that I needed help the whole time, but that I wasn't asking for help. I was kind of finding my own solutions through booze and through women, right? And those are all short term gains.
A little about my background. I went to Ohio State as well. When I first went to Ohio State, I actually thought I wanted to be a sports agent before I showed up the first day because I loved Jerry Maguire, but realized that when I observed a sports agent for one day, hey, it's not like that movie. So I pivoted really quickly and thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist. Um, and then quickly after observing psychiatry and seeing what that was like, I liked more of the being a provider and the conversations and trying to help people help themselves. So I pivoted to psychology, majored in psychology, and then that led into double majoring, become an audiologist. But I was an intern under a psychologist in the James Cancer Hospital, Ohio State, in palliative medicine. And so a lot of end of life care, a lot of really challenging situations. Between experiencing the extremes with her and terminal diagnoses, very high levels of pain, caretakers are very burnout, just tough situations. Experiencing that with her while taking classes myself, it was just very interesting to experience that realm of helping others. But I know when I first came in that day, I thought clinical therapy was me giving you the answers. So, like everybody, when we first do these simulations and people talk about their genuine problems, but then I try to play the provider role, I give all these resources, all these solutions. But you realize that the best level of support initially is trying to help people help themselves. And you seems like you had those skills, like you've known yourself. You, of course, operated at the highest level for a long time in a very, very dynamic career in the military. So you probably were very good at helping yourself when you were functioning well enough to intervene at the individual level. But we all are going to reach moments in our life where collectively we need to support each other, whether that's in our peer groups, or if we get to the medical point, we have incredible amounts of resources when it comes to therapists, medicine, and everything else. So, like understanding what help is and that it's empowering and actually is a sign of strength to ask for help at the appropriate level is a big thing I like to talk to people about too. Like, it's not like I feel bad after I lose a loved one the next day, so I should seek out professional intervention right away. Maybe if it's really extreme and you're having like suicidal ideation or something like that, maybe. But time of issues present, severity of them, and again, who you are and knowing yourself. You mentioned you know yourself pretty well. Just effective help has been something that I've liked to ponder quite a bit as I've gotten into stress management in the military and levels of intervention that are most appropriate. So when you sought help for the first time after managing things probably pretty well initially, not so well with the coping strategies that you mentioned post career. Um, what did you find in seeking help, in the ways that you did, and how it benefited you?
What did I find? I found that I do not have all the answers, right? I found that having your perspective challenged, um, is it's like working out, right? Your muscles can't grow if they're not stimulated, if they're not challenged. So too applies to your thinking, right? So having somebody else to bounce ideas off of, to get feedback from, to share like concerns, worries, um, fears. Um, it's you. It's not just about getting feedback on that, or learning a new perspective, but learning tools to manage it, to deal with it. Because something that you mentioned when you were just a moment ago was about problem solving, and it made me think that when as CEOs, naturally we problem solve, right? But all that problem solving is externally focused, right? It's out there, and just, I mean, as dudes, right? As men, right, we want to problem solve, right? We want to fix stuff. But what I realized was that I was taking that externally focused problem solving approach and applying it internally, and it doesn't work, right? Because externally I can make problems go away. Internally, I can't make fear or anxiety or depression or any number of emotions. I can't make emotions go away, right? They're part of us, and so the challenge isn't to make them disappear. Emotional avoidance is probably the number one thing people come into therapy for, quite honestly. It's learning how to live alongside them. And so you're talking about the dichotomous space that I like to talk about. um there are probably several therapy modalities that talk about, or aim to get rid of feelings like that. That's not my approach, because that's the human condition, right? You can't just avoid or disavow or ignore parts of you, because anxiety and emotions are part of you, right? You have to live alongside them. So, um, I think I went off on a tangent there, but you're talking about problem solving, in what I learned, and that's probably the biggest one.
I love that, and that you don't have all the answers. And another beautiful thing about therapy is most of the time it's self-directed. It's somebody going in and seeking support, and you're not going to learn unless you actively want to. So if clients or whoever's coming in goes in there with the open mind of trying to consider other perspectives or trying to explore parts of themselves that they maybe could use some support in, and then simultaneously the therapist or provider supporting them is not coming in with all the answers. And that's what I learned a lot in school and try to apply when I am being a provider as an audiologist. As you know, I don't do so much these days, more research, leadership, and consultation, but even providing support to my spouse or to people I'm a leader of. I'm not going to give you all the solutions all the time, or as a parent. Like, how can I help you determine solutions for yourself? Or how can we explore this together? Because the skill of cognitive flexibility is easier said than done if we're only using our own perspectives. So when you mentioned that you could have another person's perspective to just explore possibilities that are very natural, like you said, emotions, you can't get rid of them. That's what makes us human. They're actually beautiful and powerful, and we can leverage them to perform better than if we would without them. However, they can become detrimental too if we are not becoming aware of what they are, managing them effectively, and most importantly, recovering from them. Because even the positive emotions, quote unquote positive, if I'm always happy all the time, I'm going to burn out just like I would if I'm sad all the time. Like, you got to
Right.
experience those emotions fully, recognize them for what they are, and recover from them. So you sought help in 2018. And then when did you decide this was an area that you were interested in learning about more and pursuing becoming a therapist yourself?
I think it was let's see, I think it was about 20 it wasn't until about 2023. Yeah, 2023. I was still just, kind of like I was still in that mindset where therapy is weak, like I don't want to do that. So I don't want to be that. So it, it just finally dawned on me that I am probably the best person to become a therapist because it invalidates all that other, the all that aforementioned stigma that we talk about. So when I saw it that way, I was like, wow, I could really, because I've always been a helper, right? I've always been in service in some way. And so when I thought of it, when I realized that, I was like, well, that doesn't sound so bad. It's and therapy's helped me, right? So it's not like I'm just like preaching it. I've been a recipient of it too.
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, you have the prior experience that can take down some of the stigma of what therapy is. Because, I mean, not only in the military, but in past generations, as we talked about with misapplied mental toughness, are really just some people today's day and age based on lack of support systems or the circumstances that they're in, maybe not thinking that they have the ability to seek help or understanding what it might be. Removing that stigma of what seeking help actually is so powerful. And so when you have someone like you, who thought the same thing and is applying it for what it truly is, and take this as a compliment, your voice and your appearance does not seem like a therapist either. So another thing I appreciate that you're a beautiful writer and you have all this experience, but like when I talk to you, you just down to earth guy who sounds more like a SEAL who's been a knuckle dragger and had a dynamic career. You do somebody who's pursuing education once again, and this is coming from somebody who also likes hearing voices that don't sound like what they are. Because I think I sound like Kermit the Frog with a lisp. So I always like finding other guys that don't sound exactly like what they're doing or intending. Um, but so 2023, as you mentioned in your profile, your account, that you are still a resident. How long is your program? What are you studying in particular? And I can assume what your like demographics are going to be primarily, but what are you hoping to use it for post completion?
So the program is a clinical mental health counseling program. It's a little over 2 years. I've been a full time student for about the whole time, so I want to just put my head down, finish it, and get out of the program. Excuse me. So I'll finish it in just under 2 years, but it's I'm in my residency right now, and what that means is I go in. Excuse me. It's an internship, right? Clinical resident is like a really sexy term for intern. Basically, I go in and I do exactly everything that I would do, in a private practice or wherever as a counselor. I'm just not getting paid for it, right? Um, I go in a couple times a week, and the population that I work with are police officers. I work solely with DC police. There's 7 districts. I work with all of them. Excuse me, and I really, really enjoy the population because it's so similar to soft, right? I never, I always had an idea, but I never realized just how much trauma they see on a daily basis. Whereas the stuff that we do is 10,000 miles away. It's very acute, it's intense, but then we come home, right? We're away from it. Police officers and firefighters and EMTs for that matter, they see they're exposed to these traumas day in, day out for 25 years, right? And it's in their backyard. It's at the intersection where they cross to go CVS, and they had to resuscitate a 9-year old. Like it's all in their local areas. So they don't get away from that, and they don't have the training that we do. They don't have the funding that we do, and I don't. They really don't have the public support that we do, because I was talking about um, a nonprofit that I support that supports first responders, and the guy was like, trauma for first responders, really? Like he didn't get it. He didn't. So to me, that's like there's a disconnect there between what they do and the public perception of them. So um, I guess to answer your question, who I want to work with, I want to continue working with first responders. Quite honestly, we speak a very similar language. I can leverage my background to validate why they're here in therapy, and a lot of the stuff that they've been through, in terms of allostatic load and contributing to the symptoms of stress, depression, insomnia, irritability, TBIs as well for that matter. Um, I can relate to that. I can see I get it, right? So it's a very unique population. Um, yeah, that's about everything.
Beautiful. That was my assumption, and I love to hear it because, again, you can speak their language, you can remove the stigma with a population who's going to have that embedded in them. Are they seeking this out themselves? Is this a program where it's part of like a part of the like how do they come to you?
So we're contracted. It's a contract, and so this program has been around for about 30 some years, and it's very well embedded. It's going to be very well known within all 7 districts. They're exposed to it at the academy first, and so it's just kind of it's always known that we're here. Sometimes we'll go to roll call, let them know, just remind them that we're here. You guys want to talk, and so it's unique because we'll respond to critical instances when when that helo crashed into the American Airlines over DCA. We responded to that, went down to the rivers. They're still pulling out bodies, and just show them that we're still here. And um, it's it's stuff like that. Just constantly showing up, right? You don't even have to open your mouth, but just showing up and showing your presence lets them know that they're supported.
And I always talk about the concept of perceived support, sometimes over objective support being can encourage resilience more than come in right away. Nope, I got this. I'm going to take care of you. Like, no, I'm here for whenever you need to ask for help, and this is the kind of help I'm going to give you. It's not what you think. Like we're here to challenge things together. And I love what you mentioned. Of course, deploying and being an operator or having any job that requires you to operate overseas in the military is a challenge, and there's nothing to take away from that. But you highlighted the fact that a lot of our domestic first responders are in it 24/7. Like you don't take time away from all the other stressors in your life. And don't get me wrong, those stressors continue and it's challenging in the military. But speaking ignorantly from somebody who hasn't deployed operationally in the military, but has just moved around from my role, um, you can become mission focused and only deal with the collective unit that you have on that, recover together, and stay dialed into what the mission is. Whereas if you're a first responder stateside, you're still balancing that wife and kids at home, the bills, everything else. So like when you get off the job, it's just as challenging as when you're on the job. Then who do you talk to about it? How do you manage that? I mentioned recovery and how important it is before. I would imagine that the issues that stem throughout our first responders have a lot to do with the inability to become aware of the problems that they can be intervened upon, but not only intervening effectively, but recovering effectively and naturally. And I mean, I got an appreciation in school for how powerful therapy can be for anybody. Like, you don't need to be struggling to really benefit from just talking to an unbiased set of ears, particularly an unbiased set of ears that may have some understanding of your situation more than your friends or spouse at home. Don't get me wrong. If you got a really good set of empathetic ears at home, that's just as beneficial as seeking out a therapist. But when you don't have those support systems in place, my goodness, knowing that they're there and then taking advantage of them earlier rather than later so you can effectively maintain performance for what is being asked of you. And first responders, I mean, we ask more of them than most other jobs in this world. I just love to hear that kind of perspective and mission that you now have in your life. Um, So,
Thank you.
I went on a little riff right there. I'm sure you're seeing pretty high rates of burnout. Can you speak to that a little bit, more, and what you've seen in the time that you've been a resident?
Sure. But just to highlight kind of one thing you mentioned, you're talking about getting ahead of the kind of getting ahead of it, right? Just not letting it catch up with you. And I have one client who really doesn't have any like issues, any troubles, but he comes in for that exact reason because he doesn't want stress to catch up with him because he knows what a killer stress is. So he comes in every week. He's I mean like clockwork. Been seeing him for 3 months, and he just wants to come in just to get ahead of it, just to prevent anything from building up. So to your point, um, you don't have to wait. You don't wait until you're obese to go to the gym, right? You go to the gym so that you prevent that from happening to begin with, right? And so um um therapy works the same way, right? It's the mental fitness, right, as opposed to the physical. So um and then your question about burnout, what have I seen in terms of burnout? I mean, a lot of them come in for exactly burnout because they haven't dealt with it, because they waited for it to catch up with them, whatever it is, and now they're like, oh my god, now the world's falling apart because they don't know where else to go, and they're trapped, and they don't have any coping skills. They don't know, what's going on. So, I mean, there's so many. I'm sure will know that obviously there are a lot of influences that can contribute to burnout. Um, a big thing here is a toxic workplace. I've never seen such a toxic workplace, quite honestly. And so that toxicity can really just puts a damper on how you show up because you know you don't want to make the wrong decisions. You don't want to be out of place. You don't want to bring attention to yourself because you might get revoked, and now you're under investigation for a year for something that never even happened. Like there's so much just BS that happens, and it affects public safety, quite honestly, because there are quite a few officers who will go out and do patrol, and then they'll go park behind the building because they don't want to answer any calls because they worry if they go to a call they're going to respond incorrectly, or something's going to happen, and then they're going to be under investigation, so they just hang out for 8 hours. I mean, that's a real thing. So um that burnouts are really burnout is a big deal if you don't handle it right, because it affects not just you, but it affects your family, friends, and then you're just going down a rabbit hole of negativity.
As we talked about before we hopped on live, I like to sit in the sauna or hop on the assault bike and just low intensity go for a while, let my mind wander, and that's where I generate ideas for notes or posts. And one I came up with in the sauna a while back was the difference between resilience and burnout is recovery. So, like, what? So, if I want to be resilient, I need stress, I need pressure, and I need to manage that and then recover from it, and that trains the skill that is resilience. If I do not recover from whatever that stress is, positive, negative, caused by the world, caused by myself, if I don't allow myself to manage it and most importantly recover from it, it lasts long enough, I'm going to burn out. I mean, I know you know the analogy. I could hold this water bottle our entire conversation, no problem whatsoever. Tell me to hold this water bottle a week, I'm screwed. My shoulder's not going to be able to do that, and my body will burn out if I'm physically tough enough. I won't be able to sleep, and then I'll cause all kinds of other problems. So that recovery piece is so important in my opinion. Uh, and I can only imagine having a lot of friends that are sheriffs and state patrollers. So, like, I teach jujitsu in the area. I've been training for 8 years, and as you can imagine, a lot of first responders like doing that when they can find the time to do so for self care. And I'm thinking of one buddy in particular who a couple years ago decided to become a sheriff, and the stories he shares with me. When you talk about not only he has a new son at home and wife, but like you said, in his backyard, what he deals with day in and day out, and then the workplace, not only everybody else is stressed, so in stressful environments within the building, it can become stressful at time until good leaders help change that culture. But you talked about the culture of the public and support of first responders. When you have all of that pressure on you all the time, it makes sense why people are hiding behind buildings where you don't want to misstep. And if you're always under that microscope and you can't operate, which most people join these altruistic services, whether it's military or first responders, because they want to do the best they can with what they have and make an impact on the world positively. Are there bad apples? Of course there are everywhere, but most people are good, particularly in these professions. But finding ways that they can support one another and we can support them as a society, I mean, it's a big opportunity in today's day and age. And I love, again, hearing that there are individuals going into the realm to support them on the ground like you are. What have you been learning through your training, as far as strategies go, when you start talking about ways to balance all these pressures that they're managing to encourage not only management, but hopefully recovery at some point from it so they can sustain performance over time?
Oh God, that's a loaded question for sure because it's so right. It's so nuanced, right? Things are it's different for everybody. As you know, I know you know. Um, I'd say the hardest thing is shift work because when you shift, right, your circadian rhythm changes, and then you just can't pitch up, right? Your sleep if your sleep is off, your sleep is foundation to everything. If your sleep is off, everything else is going to be off, right? Your recovery, your mood, your cognition, it's all your eating habits, everything is going to be off. So that is by far the hardest thing. And to that extent, you really there's only so much we can't give them any tools. Um, they just have to make some time to find some sleep. Quite honestly, um, other than that, I mean, there's different tools that people can use from EMDR to cognitive diffusion. I like that a lot. Um, um, I like having them sit there and just like notice the emotion, just realize that okay, it's really intense right now, or it's really intense, and I'm noticing it. And the more I pay attention to it, actually, the more it goes away, and the more that they realize that they're still capable of performing whatever it is they got to do alongside these emotions, right? So holding that space for both, it's not either or, right? Again, that dichotomy, it's not either or. Either this emotion is here or it's not. It's always with it. It's always alongside it. So, um, I mean, diet is important, exercise is important, right? And self care is something that really falls to the wayside, in law enforcement, for shift work because it's the last thing they want to do. Not for everybody, but a lot of them. They don't want to train. The last thing they want to do is do some competitive training, um, which quite honestly, it doesn't make any sense to me. But I came from a different world, so um, um, I guess there's just so much. I don't know where to go with it. There's so many different tools to help them. It really just depends. I mean, there's actually a website called Yoga for First Responders. Yoga is awesome. Um, I do yoga. I've actually prescribed meditation as homework before. I teach them breath work in some sessions to bring their nervous system down, and I get great feedback on that. Is they can do it at work, they can do it in a car, they can do it anywhere, and it really helps them, kind of quell their nerves. So that's a big one. So those are a few.
You mentioned just like experiencing the emotion. Of course, you can't experience anything you're not aware of. So just drawing awareness to an emotion and what you're feeling. I mean, I know I'm guilty of it historically and still am sometimes, of just passively going on autopilot, trying to focus externally on the job or get through whatever's happening. And those emotions that are influencing particularly my degraded performance and function, are happening without my awareness. But you just draw awareness to how you are currently functioning and what's contributing to that. I mean, naturally, sometimes intervention takes place passively, but you need that active awareness first, and that everything's downhill. Not it's actually uphill if we're talking about the benefit from awareness, but downstream from awareness. Without awareness, you can't solve any. I'm not good at solving problems I'm not aware of. So first and foremost, I
Right.
love that you're teaching that. And you mentioned kind of the three most important components of being human, and relating to self care, which is sleep, how we eat, and movement. And it's ironic how when we're struggling, we naturally compromise those things pretty well. We become more lethargic. We eat like crap, and our sleep is compromised. I mean, the shift work stuff drives me nuts. Do you know? I mean, we can talk about that on the side real quick. Do you know, is that going to change? I mean, this happens in the medical realm too, and I dealt with this quite a bit in Guam for problems when it comes to scheduling and how shift work is operated. But it seems like with what we know now with circadian rhythms, such an opportunity. Don't get me wrong. Now we have to start determining who's working night shift versus day shift, but at least expanding these time periods rather than, I don't know if we're going bi-weekly, or I know every precinct is different in how they manage it, but we know that's a big problem. And it is what it is, and there's opportunities within it. But do you know of anything of a future landscape of what we can do in the shift work realm that could encourage better circadian rhythms over time?
God, I wish I did. Quite honestly, no. Like you said, awareness is half the battle. So just knowing that if your shift changes and you're on nights instead of days, knowing how that's going to affect your mood, your cognition, your appetite, your recovery. Just knowing that is half the battle. So that when you are pre shift or post shift, you can make those up, so to speak. But um,
Yeah.
I don't know of any other way to effectuate your circadian rhythm other than to keep it on rhythm.
Yeah, and like you said, awareness. So awareness, like that, you have a circadian rhythm. It's tied to exposure to light cycles. The job's not allowing you to optimize right now, which also life sometimes. My fourth kid just came, as you know. That's going to be intrusive on my natural sleep cycle. Injured, illness, you name it. You're just getting over COVID. I'm sure your sleep was compromised from that too. So like life is going to happen, and sometimes professions will influence our sleep. Have you ever read the book or are familiar with a circadian code? I think
No,
Dr.
no.
Sachin Panda is his name. I'm forgetting his entire history, but he's a scientist, and I think he was studying like circadian rhythms in plants before he moved on to humans, and first looking at light cycles and the natural circadian rhythms with our vision tied to our brains. But then he started looking at circadian rhythms of other organs. And then he was looking at the gut and the heart and the liver and the kidneys, and these also operate on circadian rhythms. They are sometimes tied to loosely, not directly tied to that of our eyes and our brains, but they're very much influenced by when we eat. And so he's one of the big names behind fasting and intermittent fasting. And there were some claims made initially about like fat loss and weight loss, and of course that's since been update and evolve. Calories in, calories out is still your base level when it comes to weight management. But when you talk about circadian rhythm and functioning of your body, there was a really cool study. I think it was called the Hero study. It looked at firefighters, I believe, and they were on 48 hours on, 48 hours off. And so their control group, eat whenever you want, do as you've been doing. And of course, when we're tired, we get hungrier, or sometimes we eat to try and stay awake. Um, I know I've been guilty of that too, based on what I'm consuming. But when you eat anything or drink anything outside of water, that's going to activate your gut, can speed up your heart. Of course, your kidney and your liver are going to function and process it too. So your body keeps working, and those organs need rest like anything else. So in their experimental group, um, I don't remember if they did multiple time periods or at least they picked a 12-hour window. So I don't care if you start eating between noon and midnight, but keep that same 12-hour window for the entirety of the study. And they saw some pretty remarkable improvements and some of the functioning, both objectively and subjectively, of the subjects that were in the experimental group. So just adding in control where you do have it, which is when you eat and the time windows that you do so. It was an interesting finding that when you cannot control your sleep cycle, the next best thing that you can do to help manage some of your function would be controlling your eating cycle. Because apparently, 90% of, at least industrialized nations, eat beyond a 12-hour window. Meaning, if I get up at 6 a.m., I'm probably consuming something other than water before 7, and I'm probably consuming something before I go to sleep and at night within an hour of that, well beyond 12 hours. So those organs don't get the time to recover like our brains do during sleep in the same way. So that was an interesting finding to add control into your life where you may not have it otherwise with sleep. Um, but then, like you said, movement, like self care and rest. The idea of recovery versus rest. Don't We rest for sure when we sleep, and sometimes you do need to slow down and just let your body relax. But intentional movement, and it doesn't need to be extreme, can really encourage recovery too. So I'd love to hear that you are applying solutions based on the person and not here's your pamphlet of the options that you can have, go figure it out. Like, of course it's going to be unique
Oh
to your
no.
circumstance. um,
Yeah. It's not everybody. Not that people have limitations, right? So I mean, one thing isn't going to work for everybody, and that not just in the fitness world, but in the mental space and the emotional space as well. So, um, It just depends. But I've heard that study before, the HERO study, and I love that you brought it up because I do just that. I do 12 to 12, and I used to do intermittent, and then I didn't need to lose any more weight, quite honestly. So I just kept it 12 to 12. But it's it, that's probably one of the most important things that I tell people is to look at their diet, because diet is, I mean, it's 90%, right? 80 to 90% of well-being, right? Fitness is important, but diet is like, diet is huge. It's going to affect your mood, your cognition, all the stuff that we also talked about. And also important to that is the window when you eat. So I know a lot of people like to eat late, right? Late night snackers. And so your metabolism, as you know, kind of, sharing this for the listeners out there, but your metabolism is faster earlier in the morning, it's slower at night. So for the late night snackers, the more you eat at night, the less it's going to metabolize. It contributes to body fat. So if you can shift that window left, it'll really, really kind of help optimize your system.
For sure. And what I love about intermittent fasting, like it's great, all of the advantages that it can do to your metabolic health and to some of those other factors that were found that I'm not remembering in that study and in general in research related to intermittent fasting. It just really helps you manage the urge that is hunger. Because even if you are keeping within a 12-hour window, I know even me now, like I feel hungry right now. I haven't eaten since this morning. I worked out and I had a fun morning with the kids outside where I was sweating. And I'm hungry right now, but that's okay. I mean, it's okay to feel hunger. I'm not starving. And we tend to feel these urges, and we jump to conclusions about what needs to happen to manage them, or we're irritable, or we're not performing as well, or I'm going to get tired and fall asleep at the wheel because I'm not actively eating something. Um, and these thinking patterns, these schemas that we develop, I mean, does become reality. So I love the idea of intermittent fasting within whatever makes sense for you, just to manage the urge that is hunger a little bit more effectively. And then you start making other decisions about the quality of your food, because quality is definitely important. Quantity of calories is definitely important too, if you're thinking about trying to actively lose weight or change your performance. But just inserting control and timing before we start coming up with other solutions. I found a lot of benefit in reading that book first to my own life and then talking to others about it who have been asking me to support them in that way. Just adding a little bit of control to your decisions about what you're doing and why. And we can start to build off of that. Very much related to like what you said with each of your clients that work with you. Where's our best starting point? And how can we progressively build upon that in ways that make sense for you, in ways that we're trying to help you get better?
Yeah, it also, talks to your point about inducing stress states, because there's some discomfort with hunger, right? And so if you really do stick to that window, and you get hungry, you realize that one thing all sensations have in common is they're impermanent, right? They will go away. So that hunger will come just like a wave. It'll come, it'll go away. Then it'll come again, and it'll go away. So sticking to that, you kind of build up that resilience as well.
Yeah, the tolerance to those waves. I like
Right.
doing prolonged planks for the exact same reason. So, I mean, there may even be some evidence out there that if you do planks beyond a few minutes, it might be like a value, uh, a devalue rather than a value add, a value detract. I don't know, but I know it tests me and my ability to manage urges of wanting to drop. So, just pushing through those waves for time where my body feels like it's going to crumble. I'm shaking, convulsing, basically experiencing an internal panic attack while I'm staying dialed in and trying to breathe through it. And hey, go figure. My body starts slowing down and I feel much more comfortable. I know I used to operate as if stress was linear. If I'm feeling some urge, whether it's physical discomfort, hunger, being tired, and don't get me wrong, I still have bad days all the time, particularly when I'm tired at night. My kids, when they have a hard time with sleep routine and it falls apart, I'm more irritable than I am with other urges. But man, these urges and their perceived severity, it's not linear. You're not reaching a need to completely blow up. But if you believe that, then you will operate that way. So I love the idea that stress is not linear, but we need to be aware of it. We need to have strategies to manage it so we can eventually either manage it for sustain effort while it's present, or of course recover from it when we can.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned, you were talking about planks, and it made me think of this workout that I'm gonna share with you. I'll challenge you to do it. It may not. You're probably not the best person, because I know you're like Burpee King, right? So the workout is to hold the plank for 10 minutes, and every time that you take a break, 100 burpees.
I
All
did
right.
a I did a 10-minute plank yesterday straight. So what if I don't?
Dude,
What if I?
that's what I was gonna say. That's exactly what I did. The first time I did this workout, I was like, I am not doing these freaking burpees. So I just held it for 10 minutes. All right, you passed. You got it already.
Yeah, that's awesome though. And like
Awesome.
you hold yourself like I like there's all kinds of funny memes out there that like have thoughts that go through your head when you're doing some sort of like isometric hold or difficult workout. If I don't complete this, you like cause this catastrophe to happen in your brain that's going to happen. Yeah. Like could I do this if a gun was held to my head? And yeah, I bet you could go a little longer. Like it doesn't need to be that extreme. Please don't go out there and break yourself. If you've never done a prolonged plank, don't listen to me and Jeff talking about doing 10 minutes straight. Like no, try to do a minute straight or go as long as you can until you shake and then drop. And I bet you, if you show up after you recovered with, okay, I made it for a minute, I'm going for a minute five now, and I'm not letting myself drop. So, like that progressive overload concept, I like applying that. Like, of course, exercise physiology concepts were made for the physical adaptations that is exercise and training. But man, it can be applied to mental fitness. It can be applied to any urge. So you start somewhere reasonably uncomfortable for you when it comes to intermittent fasting, whether that's even a 14-hour window. And then you go down to 13 after you get a little bit more comfortable. What made you uncomfortable initially? And then we can get down to 10, 8, or maybe a 24-hour fast. And again, all the stuff that you read about of whether it's really beneficial for you or no value add whatsoever, I guarantee that it's a value add if you're doing it for the purpose of training resilience and management of your urges. And there's just that's what I try to get after in these intentional stress challenges. That there's always opportunities to execute what I believe is one of the most effective forms of self care. Where are my opportunities? And if I can work with a professional like yourself on exploring them, my fears, my core values, whether my actions are aligning with them, my pros and cons, how I'm showing up as a father or a husband. There's always going to be opportunities for improvement, but how you go about them, what is a manageable level initially, and then how do we build upon that with specific training in the mental realm, the physical realm, spiritual, social, you name it.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What I take away from what you just said, Kyle, is just is something I believe in wholeheartedly is the carryover from fitness to all aspects of life, right? And to mental fitness, to emotional fitness. I mean, you name it. If you listen hard enough when you work out, you'll take some lessons from exercise and apply it to other aspects of life throughout the day. And it's a great training ground for that.
I love what you just said. If you listen hard enough when you work out, I like just listening to yourself. Because sometimes we get focused on, I need to get that PR, I need to get that external outcome in my workout. And then, like, it's funny, you like leave frustrated or really elated because you accomplished something or didn't. And you actually compromise your emotional resilience because you're tying yourself to the outcome in the fitness endeavor rather than if you're training for the purpose of becoming better on the inside and applying those lessons to the rest of life. There's so much opportunity there. And like, I love the idea of individuals who are exceptional. I don't love the idea. I think there's opportunity in this idea, but individuals exceptional in one realm. So really resilient as an athlete or as a businessman or as you name it, who are then nightmares in other aspects of their life. They
Yeah.
have all the skills applied to one domain, but it's not translating well for some reason. And those concepts are there, but how can we cultivate those skills to apply to all aspects of your life to add in fulfillment, add in balance, or whatever is most important to you? There's a lot of opportunity for all of us because there's no such thing as perfection, but there's always room for improvement. And that's not a bad thing. That is self care. Like, how can I make the most of this opportunity, get a little bit better every day in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. You kind of made me think right there in terms of like the flexibility, the applicability of lessons gleaned from fitness, and just how widespread they are. I guess let me a better way to explain it is if I only weight lift, or if I only focus on weights, then I'm gonna have a narrow kind of a narrow. I would imagine that's going to affect my view of everything else, how I might apply in life very narrowly. Whereas if I cross train and I use weights or rowers and kettlebells and body weight and running and sleds and all kinds of stuff, there's my aperture is much wider, right?
Sorry, I cut out
Yeah.
there, but Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like the dynamics of the physical training realm, the dynamics of your life, and applying, because also not only do different strategies, I would imagine, apply to different people based on where they are, and what they're doing, but I would bet, I mean, I know that's true for me, different strategies apply to different emotions or different circumstances in my own life individually. How I manage anger is going to be much different than how I manage sadness, or grief tied to either one of those, or any aspect that I'm struggling with. But understanding where I'm at and the emotions that are influencing my feelings and function, that probably is going to have a different strategy. And that it takes more introspection, more exploration, more types of support and strategies that you got to consider.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, it's more, yeah, widespread applicability of cross training, so many different modalities.
Yeah. Um, in therapy, I know as a provider, I like to think about, and this is something. So when I was trained under the stress management program in the Navy Marine Corps, COS, Combat Operational Stress Control, there was a subcomponent at the time called Caregiver Occupational Stress Control. So they just added in a few things when it comes to some of this information and when applied to caregivers. So providers, doctors, corpsmen, that's the command I was in. So they made specialized training for that so you could deliver support. They call it buddy care, from a understanding of kind of the unique challenges of being a caregiver, and that of course is true in real life too. If you're taking care of an elderly family member, a sick relative, or shit, even being a parent is being a caregiver, and the challenges that come with that. But one thing that I really started trying to focus in on in school when learning how to be an audiologist, and my psychology background really helped with this, was differentiating between empathy and sympathy. And as a caregiver, knowing both of those terms and how to apply them effectively so I can show up as effectively as I can to support the individual I'm trying to help, while not burning out myself. Without me speaking to kind of my understanding of those two words, I'm actually actively talking with a buddy on Substack right now, Michael Wundenberg, who was with Polymathic Being, phenomenal account, brilliant guy. But we're talking about how like there's so many different definitions out there of what empathy is versus sympathy, and semantics matter. I mean, I really don't care what anyone's definition of a word is, but we got to be on the same page when we're talking about a word, because you might be thinking I'm saying one thing when I'm saying another. So explaining kind of what we mean. I've experienced beyond Michael, um, people have different connotations and understanding of that word. So for you, in the training that you have and how you apply it, how do you differentiate empathy from sympathy, and how do you use those two?
Empathy is understanding the other person's point of view. Sympathy is in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. Is my definition. Um, seriously, um, empathy. So yeah, empathy is definitely understanding and being able to understand the other person's point of view from their shoes, right? Sympathy is more along the lines of feeling pity, of feeling for them, right? Not feeling yeah, just I mean, it most closely resembles pity, right? I feel bad or I feel sad for you, rather than understanding from your perspective why you feel sad, or or that you feel sad. Um, so empathy is seeing the world from their shoes. Sympathy is seeing it from your shoes towards them, right? So so that the definition sympathy in the dictionary, I, I love that definition. Quite honestly, it's it makes for a great SEAL. It makes for a shitty civilian.
It's so funny.
But to your point about how I use it, I mean empathy is empathy is at the heart, like the foundation of relationships, right? And in therapy, the therapeutic relationship is everything. It contributes to 70% of the effectiveness of outcome therapy. So being able to empathize with the other person, validate what they feel, and not apply any judgment to it, it's huge, because most people, the majority of people, come into therapy to be heard, right? And and after that, it's for whatever it is they want to achieve, such as emotional avoidance, or whatever it is. But it's to be heard, and the only way to really demonstrate that you hear the other person is to empathize with them and validate what they said. So empathy is huge. Um, yeah, it's big.
We are on the same page about kind of my understanding of the two words, although my definition of sympathy is not as cool as yours. But from my understanding of what empathy is and how I use it, I couldn't agree more. It's challenging yourself to see their perspective, and get away from your own assumptions and beliefs or own experiences, even, but understanding that you don't have all the answers and you definitely aren't in their shoes. So challenge yourself to consider that so you can find ways to support them or at least understand them better. Because sometimes the support is just, like I said, being present with their hearing them fully and understanding them fully. And that in and of itself in a therapeutic situation can be sometimes, like you said, 70% of the outcome. And then if and when strategies are needed, you could add to it. For me, as a provider and audiologist, that case history and talking to someone before I even know what the problem is, getting to know them. There's some really cool evidence in vestibular audiology or the balance side of the house that 75% of the diagnoses can be accurately um, detected and confirmed with a full, well-rounded case history. So just exploring somebody thoroughly before you even get to scans and all the other assessments that we have, knowing someone inside and out. If you are good at a case history, you can figure out a lot of things and lead down the complicated path that is the balance system from that perspective. So I love the idea of just being fully present with whoever you're working with or whoever you care about in your life, getting away from all of your opinions and beliefs, particularly when they're struggling to understand where they're coming from and knowing that we all have different issues and different or at different phases in our life. So that is a great way to support, but also from a provider perspective, I see a lot of, I mean, burnout happens in the provider realm for a variety of reasons outside of the job sometimes. But in relation to the job, you see compassion fatigue and burnout from the redundancy of being a certain type of provider doing the same thing day in and day out. And it can feel that way if you're just looking at the actions that you're doing. But if you're looking at each person individually with unique experiences and unique perspective, there's your challenge. There's your way to add value to each and every day, and hopefully diminish the possibility of compassion fatigue and optimize your opportunity to effectively help them while also keeping your skills sharp and connecting with somebody. So I love empathy, and sometimes empathy will cause me to experience sympathy. So I will. Like, I like to differentiate them
Yeah,
simply from emotion. So are you experiencing emotion or not? Because you can have stupid empathy where I see somebody feeling sad, so I feel sad. But typically, um, it's at least in my opinion, most people are like considering their perspective and how challenging it must be, and then they emote. They experience emotion because of that. So it could be for pity, it could be for whatever reason, but it's secondary to empathy. Like, so you empathize and then you do emote. And I've cried with patients before for sure. So I've sympathized with them. But if I were to sympathize with every patient that I have, I'm burning out.
right,
I'm burning out. It's
right.
gonna be a challenge. So I love your definitions, particularly the dictionary one. I'll keep actually. I read that in a past post of yours. I was wondering if you bring it up. I loved it, but couldn't agree more. But understanding those words and how you're applying them both to yourself and others can be a huge opportunity to optimize your function.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it around the head. Like over sympathizing with every single client throughout the day, you're going to wipe yourself out, right? You're just having that kind of open, porous boundaries of letting in other people's emotion and affecting you. Then it leads to countertransference, and then we're affecting the client. So um, empathy is critical. Sympathy when it makes sense, but over the sympathizing with somebody all the time, you're gonna wear yourself down.
It's funny, like, one of the biggest opportunities that I have in my life, and, like, the reason for it is beautiful, whatever, but, I struggle to empathize with my wife, and I most often jump to sympathy with my wife. If she's having a hard time, I'm having a hard time. I'm going bad cop and trying to take care of anything I can in support of her, but if again, I jump to feeling and experiencing emotion when I know she's doing that, and rather than taking a step back, having true empathy, and understanding I can't effectively show up if I'm going to be experiencing the same emotion that she is, or let it influence my function in any way. So, like, ironically, I teach this shit all the time, write about it, but the biggest opportunity I have in my life is with the person I care most about in this world. But I try to remember that. I try to bring awareness to it, especially when it's happening.
That's totally normal, man. They say, like, for coaches, for therapists, for those of us in the health profession, don't do it with your spouse. It just not. It's not going to transfer. It's not going to translate. You're too close to the problem. Um, I remind myself that when I argue, you know, um, but try. I mean, obviously, empathize and validate when you can, but just realize that also there's a natural block there as well.
Yeah. So we talked about self-care and like the different domains, primarily with movement, sleep, and eating, but also just intentional stress, like causing stress on purpose so you can go in with whatever strategies you think might be beneficial for you, practice them at a reasonable level for a brief amount of time, and then kind of train that muscle that is resilience in the realm. I do believe that's one of the best forms of self-care. Don't get me wrong, pleasurable activities, by all means, find the respectable balance in your life for you. I'm interested in ways that you like to pursue self care these days. Post teams, you're obviously actively in school and busy with that and balancing writing and everything else. But what does self care for you look like these days?
Meditation and exercise, quite honestly. And I mean, I eat very cleanly. I get up at depending on the day, around 5:30. I meditate for a half hour, and then I work out for an hour. And that doesn't like I don't waver on that. I've been working out since I was probably 11 or 12 years old, and I can probably count on both hands the number of days I've missed. So uh, to me, exercise is just natural as brushing my teeth, taking a shower. It's just who I am. So changing that up, making it more challenging. I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment in my garage. I have a garage gym because that way I don't like going to the gyms because quite honestly people just slow me down. Right, I just get on my way. I want to work out and get out of here. So so that's one. Meditation is one. I do yoga once in a while on Sundays or and then recently, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but recently I started doing cold showers. Kyle, I can't tell you how much I hate the water. I freaking hate the water. And if any of my friends happen to listen to this, they're going to be like, "What?" They're going to be completely blown away because any there's probably a handful of seals who actually like the water, and I'd say there's something's wrong with those dudes. But we're in the water so much, and Bud's like, I don't like the ocean. I don't like the pool. I don't like the beach. I don't want anything to do with any of that stuff. And so I think it was actually reading one of your articles actually that inspired me to try to do a cold shower because your brain does I forget what it's called. I forget the nomenclature, but it does create these pathways. It was on a Huberman podcast somewhere that doing these hard things creates some kind of connection. I forget what it is. And so I was like,
I think it's like
uh,
the anterior mid cingulate cortex, the AMCC
yeah, yeah,
spot in your brain. When you do hard things on purpose, there actually is a spot that will have adaptations and plasticity. And yeah, it's crazy that we actually have a location for that. But that's funny.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you're exactly right. That sounds right. So I started doing cold showers, and I hate every minute of it.
Brother, I love intentional stress, and for all the ones that I've done, there are few that I despise more than the cold, and therefore I know it's the biggest opportunity for me. Like when you talk about like anticipatory stress for what you're about to go into, the cold for sure. And I'll find ways I can get creative and make it easier by like doing a hard workout ahead of time or a sauna ahead of time. But like a cold shower in the morning or a cold plunge in the morning, there's no way I will ever enjoy that, but I also don't know if there's any way I'll enjoy the feeling of getting out of it more. So, like, you talk about delayed gratification, when I get out of the cold, holy cow, it makes the, endeavor worth it, but I have not experienced any conditioning of my desire to wanna pursue that. So it's always the biggest opportunity for me, but yeah, doing hard things on purpose because life is going to be unquestionably hard in different ways, inevitably, and you're not going to be able to predict it. There's no certainty on how that life's going to go. So if you're lucky enough to live long enough and experience some of that hardship, the more that you can do hard things on purpose, the more effectively you're going to be able to show up effectively to respond rather than emotionally react to those challenges that are coming. And I definitely use the cold as one of those. And it's funny, like parenting is one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And cold is one of the physical things that helps me show up better as a parent. And sometimes it is just the cold shower. Like I did it for 3 months in the winter one time where whenever I showered, it was a cold shower. I probably showered a little less and smelled a little bit more around the house just so I'd have to do it as often. But it was a good challenge for me after intentionally turning it down at the end of a shower, making it longer and longer. But man, you and I are on the same page, brother. And but it's funny, like
It's dark.
because you obviously, I'm doing this kind of in the liberty of my own house. You actually became a SEAL. You guys had to do that throughout Buzz and throughout training. I mean, for months, years, and of course, whatever your mission was and where you were located is going to involve most likely some of that too, based on where you've been in the world. Hilarious that at this point in your life you still hate the cold.
It never gets any easier. It never gets any better. People are like, "Oh, you just get used to it." No, you don't.
Yeah.
It is always, always consistently cold.
Yeah. And that's like the thing too, is like hard things in general. Like the hard things don't get easy if you're continuing to do things that are hard for you. Can you do things that are more extreme than you used to do? Yes. Like my workouts now are exponentially harder than they used to be. But I find that perceived exertion level and I set my workout accordingly, or I set my challenge accordingly if it's not in the physical realm. And it's still hard. So like my 90% and your 90% can be very different than someone else's 90%. But you set the challenge according to what your mission is. You specifically do that thing, experience and recover from it. It's going to be hard forever, but that gratification, the skills that you derive from it will also expand. So the delayed
Right.
gratification grows along with the initial suffering.
Right. Right. Exactly. It's the thing itself doesn't get any easier, but your willingness to do it does. Right. And that's the most important piece because that transfers over into the filtering out negative thoughts. Like all kinds of stuff. So it's really really important. So yeah, great point.
And also, like the thing itself does get easier, but other things do. And so, like other things in
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
the dynamics of relationships and the job and parenting that rarely gets any easier because all of that is changing actively over time. However, some of the stuff that maybe used to bother you, and I know I've experienced this personally, you just start finding like I don't want to expend the mental energy on some of these things that I've ruminated on or the complained about or applied negative thinking patterns to. So you just find like, no, I've already caused way more challenge than this truly is. So you just reframe, which is something that you do beautifully in your writing. You reframe what the challenge is in the first place when life brings you some of those more mild stressors that, again, if mismanaged or not aware of, can add up and cause burnout like anything else. But it helps you change your perspective of what challenge really is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, reframing that, as you know, is everything, right? It's huge because you can take an uncomfortable emotion and say, "Oh my God, this is awful. I want to get rid of it," or you can look at it as a teacher and say, "What is this trying to teach me? What can I learn from it? What's inspiring this?" So, I mean, just you talk about the dichotomy that I talk about. There's always, the yin define a common, uh, you know, issue in couples therapy, for example, is feeling disconnected. Right, I feel disconnected from my partner. Well, there is no disconnection, right? There's only disconnection can't exist without connection, right? Because it defines the other one. So it's not that you feel disconnected; it's that there's just some layers that you got to peel back to expose that connection, but it's there,
I love that.
right?
Yeah. There can't be disconnection if you didn't have a connection. And that's throwing that dichotomy into couples therapy. That's powerful. Just that short little line right there. Wow. I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
So one of the
There-
first times we connected was after I wrote an intentional stress challenge around the workout, the Murph, and I talked about Michael Murphy, and and we had connected a few times before that. I was a fan of yours already, but you reached out, let me know that you guys were in the same Buds class, and that you got to know him from that perspective and how much of a stud he was. I'd love to know, kind of, yeah, as you saw in my writing about him, his book and biography at the time, and of course the story about what happened in his passing. Both the both the book, the movie, but most importantly, Seal of Honor, his book, really hit me when I was at ODS, and it was one of the few books that I could read. I was already familiar with his name from the original story, which and what was the name? Of why is it not coming to me right now? The Marcus Luttrell's book, Lone Survivor.
yeah. Oh, Lone Survivor. Yeah,
Yep. So I had read that already. I was familiar with that, so I knew I recognized his name. And I don't remember if the movie had come out yet or not. Doesn't matter. The movie was quite good. Book was better, like it usually always is. But I still really enjoyed that movie. Thought they did a good job from my ignorant knowledge of what everything that went into it. But man, did I enjoy his book. And it like what I enjoyed most about it was like talking to you today. It's kind of same thing. Like you guys somehow something is inside some of you guys from an early point. Like you mentioned, you've been working out since you were 11, getting it after it. And don't get me wrong, I had some things about me growing up that I was disciplined, I was three-sport athlete, yada yada. But um, the shithead in a lot of ways too, and just not on the path, if you will. And we're never going to reach perfection, of course, but there's just some people that are different. And reading his story, how he had these like protective instincts and this desire to get after it, and particularly not only to become better himself, but in support of others. That just rang through every chapter, and then seemed to be, from what I hear, anyone who has known him throughout his career as well. I'd love to hear about how you knew him, what you know about him, and your experience there.
He was he was just cool. He was just a great dude. Um, um, he was just down to earth. He wasn't he wasn't pompous at all. He went to Penn State. And it's funny, you know, the Murph workout, everything that he did to as a reprimand was 8 counts. Like eight, you know, eight count bodybuilders. I'm sure you do. So um but I mean, there were several instances where instructors are like, Murph, get over here. And so he runs over, and when they tell you to forget your swim buddy, you know, that's a bad thing, right? Because everywhere you go on buds, you always have a swim buddy within 6 feet of you. So when they tell you not to bring them, it's kind of like your mom, you know, saying your first, middle, and last name, you know, like, you know, you're in some shit. So I mean, there were several instances where they're like, you know, instead of, you know, drop down every phase, in every phase the number of push-ups increases. So in like first phase we dropped down, I think it was, I don't know, 20 or 30. Second phase was 40. Third phase was 50. And you never do one set, right? You're always doing like 8, 10 sets at a time. But for Murph, they're like, Murph, drop down 800 counts, go, or 1,000 counts, you know. And I mean, he sat there and he did 1,000 counts with all his gear and all his stuff. And he, like nothing was gonna break that guy, nothing at all. And so you know, it's a testament to his resilience. You know, he's very strong. He's a total stud. He went to SCV1 after we graduated, and you know, that's where that stuff happened. But after Buds, I've never told this story before. It's pretty funny. After Buds, we go to SQT, which is SEAL Qualification Training, and at the time back then it was 4 months. Now it's like a year and a half. Um, but we on one of the weekends we went to Clemson, and we watched. I'm sorry. It was during airborne school, not SQT. It was during airborne school, jump school, before we went to SQT. We went to Clemson one weekend, and we got a house. So one of the guys went there. He went there for school, and so we stayed at a buddy's house. And somehow, you know, things, everybody just went to the winds that night. Everyone's blasted. We couldn't find Murph. Like the whole night we're like, you know, texting him, trying to find where he is. No idea where he is. You know, night turns into day. We wake up like, where's Murph? He's still gone. So we're just like, well, you know what? He's gonna find his way. He'll find us. So we ended up, we're still like hungover, still drinking, you know, going to the game. And then, like, I don't know what the main street is, but we're on the main street. Car cars backed up, and all of a sudden we got our windows down, and all of a sudden this like this guy, only wearing pants, jumps into the back of the window and slides across the entire back seat. Of course it's Murph. We're like, what the fuck? What the hell's going on? So he tells us the story. I mean, just imagine, he's like sweaty, he's like reeking of alcohol, like all of us. And most importantly, where is your shirt? So the night before, he ended up just, you know, going off on his own, and he found this house party, and they're doing cake stands in the front yard. You know, there's tons of people, and so a bunch of people were lining up to do cake stands. So he's like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna get in this line. And every person who's in there, you know, they do their cake stand, and people are like, yeah, go ahead, John or Sally or whatever your name is, cheering them on. And so Murph gets up there, does his keg stand, and everybody's like cheering him on, but they don't know his name. And then he stops, he stands up, and he looks up, and like the whole crowd just like, there's not a word. It just gets completely silent. And the owner of the house is like, "Who are you, and who do you know?" And he's like, "I'm Michael Murphy, and I don't know anybody." And the guy's just like, "Go." So he just walks out, just like walks out ashamed. So he was awesome, man. He was hilarious.
Love it. Yeah, it's so much fun to hear about like the dynamics of personality when you see an exceptional leader, an exceptional performer, but also just like a real human being that lives life to the fullest, not only in the profession but in life in general. That's a hilarious story. Nice. I've one last question for you that I'm curious about. It came up a few times, and I thought of it again as I was talking about kind of just how some people are different. As you mentioned, you can count on one hand maybe the amount of days that you've missed for getting after it, particularly in the physical realm. Was there influences that you had as a kid, or what caused you to get on that path at age 11?
Um, my dad inspired me at first because he was going to take us fishing. We're going to go to Canada and go fishing, and he said we're going to have to carry a canoe, and I don't want other people to carry my load. So that resonated with me. And so it didn't. He said, to do this, in order to carry this canoe, you got to do what was it like 50 push-ups and 60 sit-ups or something a day, something like that. So at the time, I think I'm like 11, and I didn't understand how this as push-ups equated to this, holding the canoe over my head. But I was like, well, he's my dad, so can't be wrong. Years later, he was like, yeah, I just wanted you to work out. I was totally lying. I totally bullshitted you, but it works, because I didn't want other people carrying my load, so I wanted to be responsible for my share. And so I remember one day, I went in the garage and I just wanted to see how many push-ups I could do. And I did it. I started out with a set of 25, and my goal was to get to 100. So I did four sets of four sets of 25, and then I was like, no, I'm at 100, maybe 150. So I got the 150, and then 200, and then 300. And I finally stopped at 500 because I realized that I could be out there all day doing this. Like I could just do push-ups all freaking day. I'm like 11 or 12 years old. And then I went in the room in the house. My dad was taking a nap, and I woke him up. I was like, Dad, I just did 500 push-ups. And he looks up, and I think his eyes went cross, and he fell right back down. He's like, oh my God, what did I create?
I actually read the piece where you had that in there, and then you said your arms were just cooked for the next 2 days, which is always
Oh, I couldn't
funny.
move him.
It's always funny, like, when you explore those edges, but you don't yet have, like, that neuromuscular plasticity and connections there. So, like, how do you responsibly go into those realms? But also sometimes it's just good to experience that, and it's so cool. Like, core I always think about core memories, particularly as a dad of 4 kids now, and, like, trying to create them for my kids with experiences of different kinds, and that's great to do, but sometimes those core memories don't come from my intention to create them. They just come from how I show up, how I talk to them, what example I leave them, and, yeah, it's funny some of those things that stick for them and that they bring up, and my 5-year-old's on, he'll be turning 6 later this year, and, he's kind of on that a little bit already, like, showing me how many push-ups he can do, and he was doing bridges, like where you're on your back and you turn into a bridge. But he's like, Dad, have you ever seen this? Because they come to jujitsu with me. He's like, you should do this in your next fitness class. So he's like, I call these bridge push-ups. So he does the bridge and then he pushes all the way up and goes down. And then he repped out
Awesome.
like, dude, 10 of those seems like it'd be pretty hard. I did 10 and was cooked, fell down like, my goodness, dude. And then he was like, I think I could do why he said this number. I don't know. He's like, I think I could do 39. And then he turns around and reps out 39. We got to 39. He's like, one more, and then did 40. I'm like, dude, like,
Wow.
I love that whatever I'm doing is sticking in some way for him, and he's like making that part of his identity. And then you see him actively pursuing it on his own. But yeah, it's so cool to hear about like the influence of mentors, particularly when it can be a father, and turn it into the man like you that you've created in yourself, and that you're now trying to also do for the world. Brother, this was incredible. Such a cool story, such amazing wisdom comes across in your writing. But holy smokes, it's fun to talk to you too. It's always cool to see like there's great writers out there, but man, I love when people can talk the talk behind their writing too. And my goodness, can you?
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been awesome, man. It's been great talking with you. This time has gone by really fast. So
Yeah, I
great,
looked up. I was like, holy
really
cow,
great talking.
1,500. But a great idea for the future would be I'll have to travel up because we're not far from each other. We'll have to get a garage workout in and the nice hot steam. I love
Hell
those.
yeah.
Yeah, it was during COVID. I had no business getting a stimulus check, but of course the military did. But I used some of that to invest in a home gym of my own. But I don't go as hard as you. Mine's in my basement. It's not my garage. My garage is a shit show. But I like the idea of it being in a little bit hotter environment, making it tougher. But I'll have to come up and check out your setup, and you're more than welcome to come down and check out mine sometime too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Sounds good, man.
All right, man. Thanks
Cool.
again. It was a
Well, thank you
pleasure.
so much. Likewise, man. Great talking with you. Thanks again. We'll talk soon.
All right, brother. See ya.
All right.